So guys, before we get started, don't forget we do have that amazing discount code thanks to Tier 0 Games going on right now. And all you have to do is put in ZWGames5 to get 5% discount on your total order at tier0games.com. The links will be in the description below. What's the YouTube? Darry here with Z4Games, bringing you an update to the 10 of the best Link monsters. Now, obviously, being the most recent extra deck style of monster that we've received, I thought it was about time that I updated the top 10 list, especially with so much has changed. I believe in the last 10 lists we had Firewall Dragon and we also had Nightmare Goblin, who have since been put on the ban list. So I thought, what better way to do an update than to kind of go through all the Link monsters that we now have that I feel produce such a strong impact on the meta. Either they win you games, they're nice and generic and still have a lot of use no matter what deck you put them in, or they're just kind of keeping decks alive or keeping decks around, and they're the linchpin that what kind of brings old style decks to the modernised format with Link in them. So, without further ado, I'm going to take you through my top 10, show you exactly what we've got and explain why we've got them as we go. And just kind of show how useful these cards are and why they're as useful as they are. So, we'll start off with 10, and that is Isold, 2 Towers of the Noble Knights. Now, this isn't as dominant as it once was. This was like the top main card. It was being used in Gokis, it was being abused in pretty much any warrior deck around there. Anything that could produce 2 warriors, you were playing this to be bringing out a card from deck, searching a card if you wanted to, and looping Phoenix Blade as well from the graveyard. It's not as prominent as it once was, but of course it is nice, cheap and easy to pick up as well, so everyone should be able to get hold of Isold. I mean, I think it's still being abused in Dark Warriors, so it definitely helps extend boards and can cause you a lot of issues. So it's a very, very good card. In comparison, next to it, you've got Heavy Metaphor's Electrumite. Now, these two can swap places, really dependent on what kind of decks you play and what kind of view you have on these. The way I've put Electrumite above Isold is purely because Electrumite is the linchpin of Pendulum decks. I don't believe Pendulum decks would be as close to as good as they are without Electrumite in the decks. I think it makes so many good plays. I mean, adding to your extra deck, bringing back from your extra deck, and then drawing a card as well, popping Scales, which can set off even more effects. I just think it's an incredibly good card. It's definitely like more specific because it is only Pendulum focused, but it does keep that deck alive and going. So it'll be interesting to see how the deck progresses in the future, because I mean, with Electrumite being so important, I personally feel that if they cut Electrumite, it would probably send the deck tumbling down a little bit more than it already has. But Pendulums are still incredibly powerful, especially in this format, and they can use and abuse the board like no man's business. So it's very, very good and very, very powerful. In 8th, now I've kind of only put this one in 8th because it's new and it is very, very specific, and that is Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf. Now, this is probably insane price. It's like 10 to 15 quid just for a rare card from the most recent set, but it is the most important card in the Salamangreat deck. And as we saw at YCS Dusseldorf, Salamangreats can get into the final, if not have the ability to win the final as well. It's an incredibly powerful deck. It is very, very budget, apart from this blooming card, which is taking it very, very, like, you need 3 of these, maybe you can get away with 2. I mean, it does have its downside. The fact that it needs to be reincarnated to kind of get the maximum out of it is the downside, but it's still very, very useful, very, very powerful. And the fact that you can revive a monster, fire monster as well, so you can just add back Ash Blossom on top of that, and then add back a Salamangreat spell or trap, is incredibly powerful, and it just, you know, it is the linchpin to getting your counter blocking plays for turn 1, and it's also the linchpin to get your OTK plays turn 2. So it's very, very important in the Salamangreat deck, and a very, very powerful card specifically for that deck. Next up, in 7th, I believe. Yep, 7th, we've got Nightmare Phoenix. Not much more needs to be said about Nightmare Phoenix. It can go side and side with Nightmare Unicorn. These two can swap around as well. They are both very, very generic, very, very good at spinning back non-destructive cards or popping any floodgates or back rows that might be causing you an issue. They're both generic. Obviously, Unicorn is a lot more expensive than Phoenix, but they both have massive uses in the decks, any decks that you play, and they can cause your opponent a huge amount of issue just to kind of free yourself up and move your place further forward. So the reason they're higher up the list is just because they're generic, and they can really unlock boards for you as much as you want. Next up, of course, we've got Summon Sorceress. Now, Summon Sorceress, again, is quite self-explanatory. Very, very powerful card. Again, it's not being used and abused as much as it once was, but it causes so many issues. I mean, just in the Orcus deck that's going around at the moment, and even when Orcus get new support in Dark Neoswarm, it's going to be used and abused even more. I'm hoping they don't ban it, because us in the UK and Europe have only really just got her. I think we got special editions of Soul Fusion, which is like the end of last year, whereas America has had it a lot longer than us, so they've had to kind of see its like degenerate plays and the way it kind of supports other decks for a lot longer than us. So they've had a bit more of a better view on it, whereas, you know, we kind of still need to have a bit more time using and abusing her, and kind of showing the types of plays that she can produce, because she is an incredibly powerful card. Can really, really help extend boards, and kind of give a lot to a few generic decks as well that use the similar types as well. Then coming in at 4, of course, is Sky Striker Ace Kagari. Sky Strikers are still around. They've taken a little bit of a knock on ban lists, but they haven't really been killed as of yet. And they're still very, very powerful. And Kagari is one of the main extra deck cards. I think it's the best extra deck card that they play. Being able to recycle from the graveyard, a Link 1, is very, very useful. The attack boost isn't like hugely relevant sometimes, but it's still a very, very nice effect to have on a card like this. So it's definitely a very, very good card, and it causes a lot of issues, keeps the deck alive, and keeps Sky Strikers moving forward, which is why it's so high up the list. It can go further down, but I personally feel it deserves to be this high just because of how much it brings to the Sky Striker deck. And I mean, without Kagari, how far can a Sky Striker deck really go? Because this kind of helps speed up the plays. They'll definitely lose a bit of consistency, looping Drone, looping Engage. Being able to use Engage like multiple times is crazy. Then at number 3, of course, we've got Borreload Dragon. I really, really like Borreload Dragon. Such a good card, very, very powerful, can get you out of a lot of sticky situations, but its brother, of course, can get you out of a lot more and actually finish the game, whereas Borreload can be a bit more defensive, which is why Borreload is a little bit further down the list than his brother when we get to him. So, no surprise at number 2, we do have Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardiche. What more can I say about this card? It's incredible, so good. 2+ Dark Monsters, not hard to do in any deck. You can just make it into a small little engine in pretty much anything that can use and abuse Dark Monsters. And then on top of that, it's then bringing you one from deck. It's either extending your plays, it's going into Azathoth plays, it's bringing you down Fog Blade, so it can bring out negations, it can bring out extensions, it can bring out monster changing that just locks your opponent down for an entire turn. The only downside of this card is it can't be used for a Link Summon. What does it matter? If your opponent kills this card, or if you're good enough to either get him in a main monster zone, even if he's in the extra monster zone, all his Link markers are pointing in your favour. There's nothing giving your opponent anything extra. So it's incredibly powerful, very, very useful, used and abused in a lot of cards, in a lot of decks, sorry. So there's no question about that this card should be as high as he is. And then, of course, number 1, no surprise on that one, is Borrelsword Dragon. There's a reason it rose to like $100 at one point. It's a very, very good card, very powerful, and like I said, in comparison to Borreload Dragon, it wins you the game. It can get you out of sticky situations by shifting stuff to defense, but on top of that, it OCKs like very, very consistency and like no tomorrow, and can really, really win you so many games. So that is the difference between Borreload and Borrelsword. Borreload Dragon will win you games eventually, but it takes a bit of time, whereas Borrelsword Dragon, as soon as he hits the board, 9 times out of 10, you are winning that game. It is that incredibly powerful. I don't feel that it needs to get banned. I don't think it's as degenerate as Firewall, but it is still an incredibly powerful card, and it kind of justifies its price tag in that sense. Anyway, so that is it for 10 of the best link monsters. Let me know what your best 10 link monsters are. I mean, again, this all comes down to personal preference as well, but I've kind of tried to make this as generic and just as relevant to the meta and the decks and kind of anything around right now. So it's definitely something to look into, something to keep your eye on, and you never know, when we get like Cherubini and Dark Neostorm, and hopefully you get Needle Fiber, this list will change again. But for now, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and until next time guys, as always, happy dueling. What's up YouTube, Dad here from Wargames. Thanks for watching that video. If you liked it, please hit that big thumbs up button in the bottom corner as well. And don't forget to hit the big red subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything. Make sure you click that notification bell as well so you know every time one of our new videos goes up. Throughout the whole year of 2019, we're going to have more deck profiles, duels, and of course pack openings for you guys to watch and enjoy the entire year round. So stay tuned for more, and as always guys, happy dueling.